Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Rifle Tree YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Enfield Enforcer. This is mainly going to be kind of a technical download, as it were, of information on what the Enfield Enforcer is, why it was built, who it was built for, and stuff like that. And here you can obviously tell that this is a Lee Enfield variant. Built on the masterful number 4 Mark II action. This here is a number 4 Mark II made in 1955. And for those of you that aren't sure, a number 4 Mark II is a system where the trigger is actually hung from the receiver, not from the trigger guard. Essentially, that is a distinguishing factor between a number 4 Mark I and a number 4 Mark II, or the FTR variants, number 4 Mark I, II, or number 4 Mark I, III. This is a number 4 Mark II. This is a number 4 Mark II action. But the remainder of the rifle is very different. So, first of all, what is an Enfield Enforcer? This puppy right here. Let's talk about this. The Enfield Enforcer is a dedicated marksman rifle. Now, I often hear the Enfield Enforcer being referred to as a sniper rifle. You have to excuse the steam coming off my breath. There's a winter storm going on outside, and I'm in the shop. It's pretty cold in here. Anyhow, so what is the Enfield Enforcer? A designated marksman's rifle. So what does that mean? Well, essentially, a Enfield Enforcer is, it's centered here, a heavy-barreled target rifle in .308, and it was issued to police forces in Great Britain. The barrel on this rifle is about 27.5 inches long. It has a total of 6 lands inside the barrel, or 6 riflings, or also known as cordal rifling, which means that it is slightly rounded on the corners to reduce of the lands. Like, quite often you'll see a land in a rifle, or rifling in a rifle, which is squared. These ones are slightly rounded, and the idea behind that is to reduce bullet drag as the bullet makes its way spinning through the barrel. The barrel twist on this sucker is 1 in 12 inches. It has a 10-round magazine in .308, and it is RSAF marked CR141A. Right here, and you can't see that, but anyways, trust me, it is. It has a 2-stage trigger. The first stage is about 1.5 pounds. The second one is about 4.5 pounds, and it is the nicest Lee Enfield trigger I have ever felt, by far. The finish is a sun-carite baked-on enamel finish, which is very resilient. Quite often you'll see on many of these rifles the bolt knob has been polished from use. So the bluing, or I should say the sun-carite on this bolt knob is complete. I mean, it's not marred at all. So this is a low mileage rifle. The scope that you see on here is a VS2 Pekar, or Pekar scope. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but they're made in Germany. And they are a 4-10 by 50 millimeter objective. 50 millimeters right here. Okay, we'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that a bit better. And the scope it's really amazing so far as the quality of the optics are concerned. It's got a number 4 German reticle, which I like very much. But there are a total of 16 different reticle designs that could have been built into this scope. The eye relief is about 8 centimeters. So your eye's right about there when you're looking through the scope, but it comes in and out depending on what power setting you're currently on. Let's look a little bit on at the scope mounts here. These are standard Parker Hell 1-inch rings. And here we have the front base, which is also marked Parker Hale, England, and part number is A20. Here's the I believe it's a 19.5 millimeter dovetail rear sight. with a Parker Hale stud right here, Parker Hale stud. And the listing part for this is a number BA21. So an A20 in the front and a BA21 in the rear. And it's a flip-up sight that provides no other purpose than to provide a flat dovetail here for your rear Parker Hale scope mount sight. And there's A20 right there. Sorry if you can't see it. Anyhow, you'll also notice that there's a kind of a bit of a strange anomaly here, in that there is a rear match sight which also fits into the rifle, and we'll talk about a little bit later about why that's here. You also notice a really cool stubby safety that's on this rifle. Pretty cool, eh? So that it's able to clear the bottom recess of the PHE4 rear peep sight. We'll talk a little bit later why that's on the rifle. Always a bit of a bugger getting these back on. Just like that. As you can see, this Enfield Enforcer is rifle number 360, also marked Enforcer, 7.62 millimeter, and the patent number right here. Delta 73, Pat APPFOR. Parker Hale marked on here as well, PH5E4. This, so the police were issued these rifles. So let's talk a little bit about the history of why the police ended up with a rifle like this. First of all, there's a total of, I believe, in the neighborhood of around, there's a whole bunch of the Enfield conversions made into 7.62 NATO or 308. I believe there were at least 6 of them made. One of which was issued to which was an SMLE conversion called the Ishapore 2A1. However, these are all built on the number 4 action. The first one that really came out that was calibered and chambered in 308 was the L42A1 sniper rifle, which they were all originally number 4 Mark 1 T sniper rifles that were converted into 7.62 millimeter. And you'll also note that all of the L42A1 sniper rifles, and I believe it was an L1A1 scope, recalibrated for the new chambering. They're all converted from the Mark 1 action. Original number 4 Mark 1 T rifles converted to 308, but they retained the original sniper cheek rest like you see here on this one. I'd love to have this on here just for fun, but the number 4, so the L42A1 had retained the original kind of number 4 Mark 1 T sniper cheek piece for a better cheek wheel to the optical sight. Then the British started getting into number 4 Mark II or converted actions to the converted number 1, 2, 1, 3 or the Mark II receiver, as you see here, and they built the L39A1, which is a military 7.62 millimeter target rifle. And they're all built on Mark II actions or converted actions. They also built there's a suite of different non-military versions of the L39A1, also built on the Mark II action. There's the Envoy, the Enfield Envoy, which is a commercial target rifle built on the number 4 Mark II action. And what we see here, the Enfield Enforcer, the Enfield Police and Commercial Sniper Rifle on the Mark II action. But remember that the L42A1 sniper rifles were converted using existing 303 number 4 Mark 1 T rifles. And consequently, they are World War II vintage, and they had the earlier Mark 1 action. All of the other Enfield 7.62 millimeter heavy barreled rifles were built on the new Mark II action. Okay, so you need to distinguish that is the fundamental difference between the L42A1, which is one of the coolest looking Enfields ever created. I'd love to get my hands on one day. They're extremely expensive. So are these. Moving right along. The United Kingdom is organized into 3 basic regions. You need to kind of think of Great Britain and break it up into 3 territories or regions. Okay, so the British police forces are divided into territories, or also referred to as territorial police. If you look at England and Wales, they have territorial police forces. There's a total of about 45 territorial police forces, and they cover policing area, or like a territory. And each area has basically its own independent police authority. You might hear about the Metropolitan Police, which is basically another territorial police force that is responsible for the greater London area. And then you have another territorial police force inside of that, which is called the City of London Police, which is essentially a 1 square mile area for the City of London itself. So they're kind of broken up into these territories like a patchwork quilt-like system across all of England and Wales. All right, they're territorial police. And then you have national police, like for Northern Ireland and for Scotland, right? They have national police forces, and I would equate them similar to like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Canada's national police force. The remainder of them are very much like a provincial type of police for England and Wales. Then they have also these special police forces that operate in more than one jurisdiction. For example, these officers may have powers and privileges of a constable in matters that relate to a specialized work, such as the British have the National Crime Agency, they have the British Transport Police, they have the Ministry of Defence Police, Civil Nuclear Constabulary, and they have miscellaneous police forces with responsibilities to specific or local activities in areas, like dock police and so on. But this rifle was issued to the Scottish National Police, and where in Scotland this rifle was issued, I don't know, but Royal Small Arms Factory kept records as to who these rifles were sold to, and I know that rifle number 360 was sold to the Scottish National Police, which is the 2nd largest police force in the UK after the Metropolitan Police for the Greater London area. So, why did the police need a sniper rifle? I'm going to call it a sniper rifle. It's a dedicated marksman rifle, but I may get a slip of the tongue whenever I say sniper rifle. I actually mean dedicated marksman's rifle. If you're a police force and you were looking at adopting a dedicated marksman rifle, you got to know what it's going to be used for. What are the circumstances this rifle is most likely going to be used in? And there are a lot of statistics that are available on this. There's a lot of data out there for you to be able to establish an opinion, an educated decision on what kind of a sniper system or a dedicated marksman rifle system that your police force needs. Now I have some data here from the United States, and it's written around kind of the average police sniper distances, and it's written by a chap by the name of Derek Bartlett. You should check it out, read it. It's a great report. It's very, very, very interesting. So what are the average distances a police sniper shooting in the United States generally tends to be engaging targets at? Okay, so it's useful in understanding how snipers have been employed over the last 20 years. And what are the longest and the shortest distances that they generally are finding that they're encountering? How many have occurred in daylight as opposed to low light? How many shots have passed through intermediate barriers? So they've had to engage a target that was behind maybe a light wall. How many have passed through the intended target? You know, so what kind of ammunition sources should we really be looking at? What kind of ammunition formulations and bullet types? What are they using? What should they be using? So this chap, Derek, he sourced data from about 664 law enforcement agencies and provided reports on about 219 individual sniper shootings that occurred between 1984 and 2004. So quite a large selection of data to draw from. And what it boiled down to, and you may be very surprised at this. Just take a shoot an answer out there. What do you think the average police sniper distance is? What is an average? What do you think? Take a guess. I'll tell you. The average police sniper distance in the United States is 51 yards. Okay? 95% of the shots that took place in the United States between 1984 and 2004, 95% of the shots were between 0 and 100 yards. Yes, there are very, very close shots from snipers with precision rifles up, 5 yards away. I know, it's very surprising. Only 5% of police marksman shots, only 5% took place outside of 100 meters. Most of them took place within 250 yards. Okay, but only 5% of those shots occurred between 100 and 250 yards. Everything was within the 100 yard threshold, 51 yards being the average. Alright? The longest shot during that period was about 187 yards. And it was a hostage rescue, but they have other data that brings it out to about 250, but in that period it was 187 yards. 23% of the shots taken using these types of rifles included intermediate barriers of some type. So a consideration when you're looking at a rifle design, and I'm only going over this to give you a bit of an idea as to why they decided or chose this rifle. Home branch, or the Home Office of the British Police, looked at this rifle and chose it for a reason. Now we're going to go into a little bit more detail around this stuff, but that's the reason why I'm going into this detail. 50% of the persons that were shot by the police in the United States, 50% were shot in the head, 50% were shot in the body or their extremities. Half of them were headshots. And that makes sense if you take into consideration most of these shots occurred within 100 yards. Right? So these are precision weapons that are capable of dropping a target in that manner. There are concerns if a subject is wearing explosives around their chest. Do you take a chest shot in those situations with the concern that you're actually going to be setting off explosives and so on? So 50% head, 50% body or extremities. 80% of those shots were fatal. 34% of the shots were in barricade situations where the person had barricaded themselves into a building. They still had to take those shots. And 36% were hostage situations. 21% involved a suicidal subject. 45% of the shots occurred during low light conditions. So this is the environment that you're going to be requiring a rifle to fulfill. So this not only has to do with what kind of a build a police force needs, but what kind of training your officers need, your marksmen need. So much of the traditional sniper training has been in the past, and I suspect it was with this design as well. So a lot of the training was limited to prone and bipod use. See, there's a couple studs here for bipod use during 100-yard shooting drills. The report verified that the snipers seldom shot from the prone bipod position as they do from training, and instead they engaged almost all of their targets from the standing, sitting, kneeling, squatting, or improvised positions like you would in a normal hunting situation, right? Find a rest, use a rest. Okay, so training and sniper build, or rifle build. Knowing what we know, what the U.S. typical situation is for the application of these rifles, the British Home Office put some specifications together for what this rifle needed to do in Britain. So this is what was running through their head. Okay, so the mission requirement for this rifle, this one right here, was that they wanted a long-range firearm suitable to fulfill a sniper function in urban areas. Predominantly, this would be used in a metropolitan situation. The weapon would be acquired when an armed man opens indiscriminate or deliberate fire from a building and cannot readily be reached at close quarters unless his rifle can be neutralized. So, indiscriminate shooting, people barricading themselves inside of buildings. Sounds pretty familiar. So they've obviously done a bit of their homework, the Home Office, the British Home Office. There would also be a need for a long-range weapon when pursuing an armed criminal across open countryside. So this thing would need to be able to take fairly long shots. And the weapon would also be needed to deal with guerrilla activities, such as activity at airports. Right? So that was the mission. That was the mission for this rifle. Now, they also specified some performance requirements. Now, accuracy is obviously paramount when it comes to developing a dedicated marksman rifle, right? And it should be able to function reliably. This rifle was built to hit a man's head at 300 yards. That was a performance requirement, and it must be capable of putting shots through an average domestic window at long range. So what constitutes long range? And here's how they described it. The rifle and this rifle's ammunition must have an effective range of about 500 yards, and possibly more, to cope with the mission. Okay, the mission was urban requirements, armed man, indiscriminately firing, deliberate fire on people, be able to access targets at long range, and for guerrilla activities. Great. So that was it. 300 yards headshot. That's what they had in their minds. Now, the ammunition that they used to fulfill this requirement. Remember, these rifles replaced the standard 303 number 4 Mark I rifle as their standard military round was 303 British. They wanted to replace it with the 7.62 NATO because they had supplies that were readily available and of a quality suitable for highly accurate shooting. So the 7.62 NATO was available, and this is the manufacturer at the time was the Royal Ordnance Factory, and the ammunition was referred to as Radway Green. And there were kind of a spectrum of ammunition choices but they essentially what they landed on was called green dot. There was black dot, which was ammunition that was just sent out for just normal use. But essentially there was two types, black dot and green dot. Green dot was the target ammunition. This stuff was set aside for the dedicated marksman rifles. And I believe it was L2A2, which is a 144 grain bullet called Radway Green. But there's also other types of ammunition, such as L44A1 target ammunition, which had 155 grain full metal jacket boat tail. So this is the kind of ammunitions that were standard service issue for the L42A1 sniper rifle. The police adopted the same ammunition for this rifle. So they came down to a decision, and after examining a spectrum of weapons, performance reviews, and taking account of supply and maintenance arrangements, the Home Office concluded that the most suitable 7.62 rifle for use by the police would be the Army target rifle L39A1. And this was used in conjunction with the military L42A1 sniper rifle ammunition designed for it, which is already on the scale of issue, was readily available. The rifles were very popular and dominated the target shooting situation. And on a balance of performance, cost, and access to servicing through the Royal Small Arms Factory, they decided on the Enfield Enforcer as the standard issue police dedicated marksman rifle. This puppy right here. Now, one of the other things that the British Home Office insisted on was that the Enfield Enforcer would be capable of being fitted with a match peep sight and a telescopic sight, as you see here. That's one of the reasons why they recommended the L39A1, because it was widely used with peep sights. Now, why would a dedicated police marksman rifle be required to have a match peep sight? We've seen them in we've seen that philosophy with a lot of police and army match rifles in the United States. Why the peep sight? Well, first let's go into sights and expectations of this rifle. Now, the Home Office concluded. I'm just going to take this off. The Home Office concluded that telescopic sights were essential for operational purposes. They understand that. They also thought that it was desirable that police rifle shooters should be encouraged to indulge in the sport of target shooting. They highly supported that. So for this purpose, rifles fitted with iron target sights was required. They wanted it to be possible for the telescopic sight and the target sight that they could be interchangeable. with the fourth sight remaining in position. So they wanted the front sight to remain in position. And the Home Office thought this would be the ideal solution, since they were convinced that it was desirable to encourage the police rifle shooters to engage in target shooting, NRA shooting, and so on. Here we have the front sight. It's called The Matchmaker by Alfred Parker Birmingham. There's a barrel patent number here, 15572-73. You can see it's it's a front globe. It's a front globe sight. Okay. It's awesome. Looking at this thing with a front aperture and a rear aperture is really, really cool. I mean, just the sight picture is awesome. So accordingly, they recommended that the L39A1 rifle should be fitted with a two-piece telescopic mounting and Pekar telescope with interchangeable target sights. And upon approval and issue, the Enfield Enforcer, upon approval of this rifle, all existing Lee Enfield 303 weapons were withdrawn from police service. Now a little bit about the history. There were a total of 767 of these rifles built. Not all of them were issued to police forces, mind you, but there were a total of 767 of them built. Zoom in a little bit. Beauty, look at that. Isn't that nice? Beautiful rifle. 767 built, and about 380 of them survive today. Half of them were destroyed. So with that in mind, that makes the Enfield Enforcer one of the most collectible and rare Enfields in existence today. So let's talk about the Enfield Enforcer. Is it a sniper rifle, or is it not a sniper rifle? So what is a sniper? So I look at snipers as being four different things, and it bugs me when I see people referring to, heavy barreled rifles as sniper rifles. So here's a sniper. A sniper is a specialist who operates alone in pairs, or operates alone or in pairs, or with a sniper team. And what are they doing? What do they do? What are they masters of? They're masters of observing enemy activity, numbers, capacity, and movements. 2, they're masters of personal and position concealment. 3, they're integrated with other weapon systems and personnel such as artillery and so on, calling in bomb strikes and so on. And 4, they're master marksmen capable of engaging targets at distance with precision. The police don't often need all of these things, and they certainly in the 1970s, when these rifles were being issued, that wasn't really what the police were doing. They may be doing that today in many cases, different times, right? But that's not what these rifles were for. Certainly not in the late 60s and up to the 1980s they didn't. So the police members were referred to as marksmen, not as snipers. And police marksmen must be able to fulfill the following responsibilities. They need to be able to maintain the highest standards of marksmanship. They need to trade off shooting and observation tasks with a partner if they're available. That's just to keep their eyes in good shape, keep their minds fresh. They need to be able to report situational details to their commanders and to other teams. They're the eyes and ears quite often of a situation. I know certainly in the United States for the FBI that those police marksmen often are in contact with the hostiles with a view to initiating communications. Police marksmen neutralize targets of high potential for violence. They monitor the status of bystanders, hostages, and explosive devices. They provide advice on timing and strategies for deployment. They initiate a breach by alerting team members to offensive opportunities. They provide covering fire for entry teams and operatives. And they retain a clear understanding of the rules of engagement. Those are what police marksmen do. I mean, there's a lot of things there. I mean, they're different to a sniper, but their role is no less important. In fact, in many ways, it's very complicated. To me, it's apples and oranges. A army sniper versus a police marksman. Right? They're different. No, one may not necessarily be a lesser shooter. You know, they could be equal but different in different ways. So let's look at something. Let's look at an example where I know Enfield Enforcers were involved, and that is the Iranian embassy siege that occurred in the spring of 1980. After a group of 6 armed men stormed the Iranian embassy in London, England, and the gunmen took 26 people hostage. Now, the hostage takers were Iranians campaigning for sovereignty of Khuzestan, which is an Iranian province. They demanded the release of Arab prisoners from jails in Khuzestan and safe passage out of the United Kingdom, which the British, of course, I mean, they're not going to allow you out once you take hostages. So their request for safe passage out of the UK was quickly denied. So a siege ensued, and over the following days, police negotiators secured the release of 5 hostages in exchange for minor concessions. And on the 6th day, the Iranians killed one of the hostages and threw the body out of the embassy. As a result, the British government handed leadership of the operation from the police over to the Special Air Service. Now check out this photograph. What do you see in the lower left-hand corner? There may be other police marksman roles that were required just because of numbers. These police marksmen may have stayed on top of some of these roofs, but generally when the police hand over an operations to a system such as the SAS, it's a built-in system, right? They have their own snipers, they have their own this, they have their own that. Anyway, so they handed over to the Special Air Service, and shortly afterwards, soldiers abseiling from the roof of the building, forced entry into the windows. They took out the hostages, and during a 17-minute raid, the SAS rescued all but 1 of the remaining hostages, and they killed 5 of the 6 terrorists. And this picture that right here of the Enfield Enforcer is the only one that I know of an Enfield Enforcer actually on deployment. I'd be very interested if you guys know of more Enfield Enforcer pictures that were taken of Enfield Enforcers in action, right? So if you know of any, contact me and email them to me. I'd love to see them. So that is essentially it. Just a kind of a quick breakdown of the history of the Enfield Enforcer, and I hope you enjoyed it. Not a terribly exciting video, but sorry about that. However, it's a bit of a blizzard outside right now, and I don't really feel like going out and doing much in the way of shooting. However, you can pretty much know that you ain't seen the end of this rifle, right? There's going to be, come on. There's going to be some video footage of this thing doing what it likes to do, doing what it does best, before you know it, on the Rifleture YouTube channel. Bang. Just like that. We're ready to rock and roll. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. We'll talk to you later. As always, Maple Leaf up.